everyone, it's Shar. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. I want to do a recommendations video today, but I wanted something a little bit different. This shirt is very much tucked into my dress, but I want to do a recommendations video where I'm telling you about books that I love but don't really talk about on my channel. To be honest, I've been hesitant to film this video just because I read these books a long time ago and I'm not sure I would still agree with myself that I love these books. But for now, my opinion of them remains what it was when I initially read them. And so I'm going to tell you about 8 books that I read and loved, but don't talk about often. The real challenge here is, do I remember the summary for these books? So the first one is As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. And the reason I don't talk about this book is because it's the final book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and it would spoil it. But if you're watching this video, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to give you a very generic summary. I'm going to tell you that Pip, our main character who's been solving these murders throughout the series, is being stalked, and we get the conclusion to this story. I'm sorry, I know that's a shitty summary. I won't spoil it for you because if you haven't read the series, you should read the series. Book 1 was fine, in my opinion. Very Pretty Little Liars almost. Book 2 is forgettable. Book 3 is that girl, and I know that I hold the unpopular opinion here and that people generally tend to hate this book, but they could never make me hate this book because this book, it's so good, it's so dramatic. Holly Jackson just really said, what if we went completely off the rails? And I was absolutely here for it. I wish I owned a copy of it. This is one of my favorite books, and I don't speak about it often just because it's the final book in a series. Then I have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is also a book that perhaps is an unpopular opinion because it does go very chaotic. And I will openly admit, there are things in here that make me uncomfortable. I'm like, I just wish you hadn't included that. How about we don't? But it goes off the rails. The ending is absolutely unhinged, and I do really love this book. It has a slow start, but let me tell you the summary. So in this story, we have a woman who's an actor, and she's a child of a very, very famous actor as well, and she is struggling with alcohol abuse, and her mother's like, you are embarrassing me, you're ruining your reputation, and I'm going to send you to our lake house where you're going to detox and just be quiet over there. So she goes over there, and while she's at the lake house, she's dealing with a lot of things. I won't tell you what she's dealing with, but she's dealing with a lot of things. She gets obsessed with this house across the lake, and she starts watching them from her window, and one day she sees the couple get into a fight, and then the woman disappears, and she is trying to solve what happened. As I mentioned, it gets very, very, very chaotic, but sometimes I just like a campy story, and this book definitely leaned into the camp. This one is perhaps a questionable fave. I don't know how I would feel about it if I read this book now, but I have Autobiography by Christina Lauren, which is one of the few Christina Laurens that I really enjoyed, with the full disclaimer that I read this in 2020 when I was first getting back into reading. But in this story, it's a YA where we're following 2 boys in Utah in a very, very Mormon area. So they are assigned to write a story together in their writing class, and it's a story of how they fall in love and all the things that they deal with living in a very, very religious area, living in a Mormon area, and being gay, and how they navigate that. I don't remember much about this, but I remember that I really loved this story so much. But if I went back and I reread it now, I'm not sure how I would feel about it, or if I would pick up things that I didn't pick up the first time around. Redemptor by Jordan Nifueko. This is a fantasy story set in Africa. I'm forgetting which specific country in Africa, but this is surrounding a lot of African folklore and legends. And in this story, we have the Ray Bearer, which is book 1. And it starts with this family who kind of has a lot of power over the kingdom because they're blessed by someone. And the future king always has a council of people who can use magic and who can help him tap into magic. And that council is put together when they are young children. So in this story, we have a young girl whose mother has a lot of magic and actually curses her and says, you are going to go and become part of the future king's council. And this, remember, is a very young child, but you're going to love him and then you're going to kill him. And that is her mission. And she is also cursed to forget that that is her curse. So you're following the story of her infiltrating this council as a very young girl, making friendships, but also dealing with the after effects of this curse and the fact that she doesn't remember, and she loves all of her friends, but she is doomed to betray it. Redemptor is my personal favorite because Redemptor follows a series of magical quests. The children in this book are fully grown up now, and we have a story within the underworld and our main female character who has come into her power and is navigating all of that while dealing with all of the political things that are going on in the background. This is such a good story. I wish I owned a copy of it. I absolutely loved this, and it's just a personal favorite. And I have a sapphic romance, which for some reason has a very, very low rating on Goodreads, but I really enjoyed this book, and that's Some Girls Do by Jennifer Dugan. Can I remember the premise of this story? Not really, but Some Girls Do by Jennifer Dugan, I believe, follows this girl who has been kicked out of her school because she is gay. And in this new school, she ends up meeting this other girl who's like a beauty queen and just like very popular, and they form a relationship. And we're talking a lot about exploration of queer identity, coming out, and the individual struggles that each girl is facing. One with being kicked out of her school for being queer and the homophobia that she faces being openly out, and the other girl who is dealing with a very, very difficult home life and expectations put on her because she is so pretty, how people take advantage of that and manipulate her. So I really enjoyed this story quite a bit. Again, I don't know how I would feel about it if I read it now, but I did really love it at the time, and this is definitely a sapphic romance that I think about fairly often. And I have Horrid by Katrina Leno. Listen, if you're looking for a gothic story with some horror elements and like the slower pace, but make it a little bit younger and a little bit more fun, this is what I would recommend. In fact, I would say if you liked Gallant, you might like this book. So, Horrid by Katrina Leno is the story of a teenage girl and her mother, and they are moving across the country from California to Massachusetts, Maine, I don't know, somewhere in New England. And they're doing so because her mother has gotten like this house she inherited, and they're moving back there because they're dealing with financial issues. So they move back to this town, and we're following our teenage girl throughout the story as she is navigating this situation, right? She's adjusting to the town, she's making friends, but she's also hearing stories about her own family that she's never heard about, her mother's family, this house. And while she's in this house, she keeps hearing noises, she's seeing things, and she's wondering if she's losing it as she's navigating this haunted house, but also the history of her family and just how dark it gets that she was never aware of. Like The House Across the Lake or As Good as Dead, this story does go to potentially very chaotic areas because I love a slower pace and I love a gothic story. I've really enjoyed this story quite a bit, and I just picked up a copy of this book for like 50 cents, which I'll show you in an upcoming video. Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. This admittedly I have spoken about before, but I don't speak about it very often on my channel. So Reckless Girls is a very campy story. It's a quick story, something you read when you just want to have a good time and finish a book quickly. So Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins follows this couple in Hawaii, and they are just kind of making it through life, living their happy life, trying to make money. And then one day these two women come to them and say, we want to go to this island, and this island has a very, very dark history and it's incredibly difficult to get to, but no one will take them to the island because it's so dangerous. So they encounter this couple who happen to own a boat, offer them an obscene amount of money to take them to the island, and they agree. And what ensues is a very dream-like sequence where they're just having a good time, lost in the haze, on the boat, really kind of living I want to say a separate version of reality, but they've checked out of reality. They're choosing to live in like this fantastical world until another boat arrives. And that is where the story gets absolutely wild. It's a thriller. So there's lots of murdering going on. And again, if you're looking for like a popcorn read or something that's just very quick and easy to read, Reckless Girls is a very good time, and I really enjoyed this story for what it was. And finally, I have A Nordic King by Karina Hallen. So A Nordic King, as you can imagine, is a story about royals. We're in this country and we open up in this sequence where the king was married to this woman and this woman dies, and now he has his two daughters that he's trying to take care of while also trying to run his kingdom. kingdom. And of course, they have caretakers, but he wants someone to be more involved with them. So he is hiring a nanny. And so he hires our main female character. And this is such a fun story if you love like the single dad trope, but you also want something a little bit angstier because of course it centers around their relationship, but also the scandal that ensues for the king of this country to get into a relationship with his nanny and the things that they deal with. I love this story so much. It is such a fun time. And the whole single dad element worked. Plus, if you're looking for a single parent romance where the children are actually prominent characters and have fully developed personalities, this story does have that. There's lots of fun scenes with the girls. They're a little bit older, but I mentioned it has a lot of angst, some emotional darkness going on throughout this, some very scary things that have happened, but I really enjoyed this story. I'm glad that I read it, and that does bring us to the end of this video. So there you have it. Those are 8 books that I don't talk about on my channel very often. I would want to go back and reread some of these, so maybe I'll do that later on this year or early next year. But as always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've gotten to the end of the video and you want to leave an emoji, leave me the mushroom emoji because I'm staring at my mushroom stuffed toy across from me as I'm filming this video. Make sure to subscribe before you head on out, and I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye!